Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Rachel. If this is your first time here, welcome. And if it's not your first time here, thanks for coming back. So today, I saw Angelica Nyqvist do a video very recently called Palettes That Surprised Me. And I wanted to do it. I actually watched her intro and I stopped the video. I didn't want to watch it any further because I didn't want to get any ideas. I don't even know what she picked. I'm gonna watch her video after I record this video. But I picked out 5 palettes that surprised me that I didn't think I was going to love as much as I did. And then I picked out 5 palettes, things that I thought I was going to love that I actually was let down by. I'm gonna link all of the palettes down below as well as everything that is on my face today. And if you enjoy this while you're watching it, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing. I'm of course going to link Angie's video down below if you haven't seen it to check it out. So let's start off with the palettes I wasn't expecting to love as much as I did. So the first one is the Star Wars palette from ColourPop. I voted this, I think, in my top 10 of my favorite palettes that I tried last year. And I remember seeing this and being like, oh, okay, that's cool. It's a cute palette. I'm not a huge Star Wars fan. When this launched, I had never even watched Star Wars or I've seen pieces of it. I have since watched all the Star Wars movies and I do enjoy the movies. But at the time, I was like, oh, okay, it's whatever, it's Star Wars. I remember seeing the promo pictures and thinking, wow, they did a really, really good job with the packaging. They did a great job, I think, capturing the movie poster in eyeshadow form in a way that still makes sense to wear on the eyes. You know what I'm saying? Because sometimes when we think of, oh, representing the movie, yeah, but it's also makeup. Like we also have to wear it on our face. So it kind of has to make sense in that way too. And I think they did a great job with this. But anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. When I first saw this, I skipped on it. I was like, I mean, it's fine. And then I ended up purchasing it a little bit later down the road and I was blown away by this quality for ColourPop. Is this the best quality eyeshadows that I've ever tried? No. But I think for ColourPop, they stepped it up, especially in the shimmer department. I find that ColourPop shimmers aren't always like the sparkliest, the most impactful. I think their mattes are pretty good. You know, there are different levels of quality, but I think the mattes and the shimmers in this are really fun. I love that they have these 2 marbled shades. It's very galactic. I love that they have a couple duochromes. I love the selection of mattes, and I really had a good time playing with this palette. Like I said, I was expecting like ColourPop quality. I think this is stepped up a notch and I really, really, really enjoy this a lot more than I thought I was going to. The next palette is, spoiler alert, if you haven't seen my palette ranking for 2022, I almost forgot what year it was. Oh my goodness. This palette is the palette that I ranked number 1. And so obviously I loved it in the end. This is the Natasha Denona My Dream palette. Now I really love Natasha Denona's eyeshadow formula. I especially love her minis. And I find that her midi palettes are good, but they're not my favorite quality, especially in terms of the shimmers. I think the mattes are great, blendable, easy to use, but I find like I have the Glam palette, I have the Bronze palette. I think the shimmers in those palettes are not as super special. They're really pretty, they're really good basic shimmers. But this one, when I got this, I was so excited and impressed to find that there are different textures. The shimmers are amped up a little bit. And I also think that she went a little bit further with this than her usual midi palettes. There's deep, dark tones in here. There's a mix of cool and warm. So I was surprised to fall in love with this palette, honestly. I was expecting good quality, but I wasn't expecting really beautiful, like sparkly shimmers. There's also a duochrome in here, which is pretty darn strong shifting. I was not expecting that. I'm really, really loving this palette, obviously still, and I was really impressed with it. The next palette is, you know, it's kind of a weird answer because I was kind of expecting it because of the hype, but I'm still shocked because of the price. And that is the BH Cosmetics Say It collection, and especially this one, Optimistic AF. This has got to be one of my favorite palettes in my collection. The quality of this is amazing. It's on par, in my opinion, on par with like a Natasha Denona. The mattes are blendable. The shimmers are just wet looking, so pretty. I love this color story, and this line has several different 9-pan palettes, so there are a lot of different color stories that you can play with, but I'm shocked at the quality based on the price. And I even bought this at Marshall's, I think for under $10, which is insane to me that this quality can be made for that price. And I'm really hoping as we go forward with BH Cosmetics that the quality is going to be the same as this. You know, I'm crossing my fingers that it will, because this quality is phenomenal. And if you stuck a high-end brand's sticker on the cover of this, I would totally believe you. So I was shocked to like really experience this palette after everything I had heard about it. Okay, so this palette I was actually really surprised about. I thought it was a gimmick. So this is the e.l.f. and Chipotle palette. Do any of you still have this palette? And by the way, as I'm going through this, I want to hear your thoughts on everything I'm talking about. And I want to hear, like, are there any palettes that you were surprised that you actually end up loving so much more than you thought? I really would love to know in the comments. But when I first heard this was way back when weird collabs weren't as common as they are now. Now they come out several times a week. Right? But when e.l.f. and Chipotle were gonna collab, I was like, that's interesting. And I was like, I love Chipotle.
Oh my god, I love Chipotle.
But I'm telling you, the quality of these shadows is so good, and it's some of my favorite quality shadows from e.l.f. I like this one and the American Eagle collab that they did this year. I think those two palettes are the best palettes I've personally tried from the brand. Oh my goodness, so good. The mattes are ultra buttery, ultra blendable, and the shimmers have that little bit of extra sparkle to them. They're really smooth, they're not chunky. I love the color story of this. It's very earthy. Now, it's supposed to be like the Chipotle service bar, which kind of grosses me out in a way, but I also like it. I can't lie. So I was really surprised to find that this was good quality. Kind of thinking it was a gimmick, kind of expecting dusty, crusty e.l.f. eyeshadows, and I was pleasantly surprised. And then last but not least, for this category, I have the Christmas Eve palette from Oden's Eye. And now you're probably thinking, well, Rachel, you've tried Oden's Eye quality before. You know that it's good. You're right. But when they first showed that they were releasing this one and the Merry Christmas palette, I was kind of determined to only purchase the Merry Christmas palette because I'm a warm tone lover. Not that you can tell because I am wearing cool tone eyeshadow today, but I'm not a blue girl. I'm not really a cool toned eyeshadow lover. Like, I wear cool tones, but I always prefer warm over cool. And so when I first saw the pictures of this, I was like, okay, it's pretty, like objectively, hanging it on my wall as like a piece of art, it is pretty, but am I really gonna get use out of it? I'm so glad I purchased this. And I know I don't want to rub it in because I know so many of you missed out on this and are so sad, but I am so happy I bought this. What really convinced me to buy this was some influencers got this early in PR and were able to use them on camera. And I believe it was Heather Austin that I first saw use it. And she was just saying, this is like one of the best palettes that's launched this year. And I was like, ooh, okay, you've convinced me. It doesn't take much. But something about these blues, they're just so strikingly beautiful. And of course, Oden's Eye quality is top-notch and beautiful and wonderful. And this shade, Gorgeous, which is a multi-chrome, is one of my favorite shades in my collection. It is so beautiful. I was not expecting to love a blue palette, you know, or half blue palette. It's not all blue, but a lot of blues in this palette. I've gotten a lot of use out of it. It is my favorite one over the two even, which I wasn't expecting, but there's just something about the looks I get out of this that I was not expecting to love as much as I do. All right, now we're gonna go to the flip side. So these were palettes I was expecting to love. Obviously, like spending my hard-earned money on them, I wanted to love them, but I just didn't. So the first thing is, and by the time you're watching this, because I'm pre-filming this, you've already seen my palette ranking video for everything I've tried so far this year. And these are coming in the last place, unfortunately. These are the Ace Beaute Floral collection. I'm really disappointed in these. I have tried Ace Beaute's formula before, and I really enjoy the formula. I think their mattes are gorgeous, their shimmers are gorgeous, but these palettes for me, really more the mattes in these palettes do not pick up on a brush at all. No matter what I do, I could not get pigment on my brush with these palettes. And I'm talking all four of them. Now the shimmers in this are really pretty. They are still very hard, like the mattes and the shimmers, very hard pressed in the pan. So I'm also having a little bit of trouble picking up these shimmers, but not as bad. The shimmers are really pretty, like once you get them on the lid, but to get a cohesive look with these mattes takes a lot of effort on my part. And I'm really sad because they're so beautiful. Like I was so excited when they showed these palettes. I love the packaging. I love how small they are. I love all 4 color stories would be color stories I definitely would be getting use out of. But these are just unusable for me and I'm kind of disappointed. But again, it could be just me because I know a lot of people have talked about how much they love these palettes. So unfortunately, they didn't work out for me. The next palette I don't have, I decluttered, but it was a disappointment, obviously because I decluttered it. So this is the Wet n Wild Saved by the Bell palette. Now, in the past, before purchasing this palette, I had had a good experience with Wet n Wild eyeshadows. I actually found that they were pretty good for the drugstore. One of the better drugstore, like true drugstore formulas that I've tried. The mattes traditionally were good. The shimmers were a little bit more on that sparkly wet side. This palette was not good. It was not good. And I was so excited because I loved Saved by the Bell growing up. Like I was excited about the IP. I was pumped. And this again was at a time where collabs weren't as often like as they are now, kind of weird collabs, random collabs. This palette was bad. It was bad and I wanted to love it because I loved the IP. I spent my money, I bought the whole PR box. A lot of the products from the entire collection kind of sucked. I have a couple of brushes actually from the collection that I love and I use almost every day, but this palette was not good. This palette was not good. I was really disappointed and it was one of the worst Wet n Wild palettes that I've personally tried. Okay, this is gonna be a controversial one, but I just gotta tell you how I feel. So I don't have these anymore. I did declutter them as well, but these are the e.l.f. Bite Size eyeshadows. They don't live up to the hype, in my opinion. Are they the worst eyeshadows I've ever used? Absolutely not. But I thought, based on how everybody was like talking about how magical they are, I thought they were gonna be so much better than they are. Now, of course, they are very affordable. You can't deny that. For the price that you're paying, I think they're acceptable. But I just don't think they're worth the money. I would rather save that money and put it towards something else personally. I really didn't find that the mattes were very good. They were a little bit chalky, a little bit harder to build up. The shimmers were like, okay, they weren't great. I think the shimmers were better than the mattes, at least in the ones that I've personally tried. I think I had pumpkin pie, both the mint ones. One of the mint ones, the mattes didn't show up on me at all. Like I remember trying, I did a dedicated video on that collection whenever it came out, and the mattes did not show up on my light skin tone. And then I also had like rose water, and again, the mattes they did not show up on my skin tone. And I'm thinking, what's wrong with me? Everybody loves these palettes. You know, it just goes to show you that we don't all have to agree on everything. What works for you might not work for me, and what works for me might not work for you, and that's totally okay. It's just maybe we're all looking for something different. So anyway, I didn't enjoy those, and they didn't live up to the hype for me. All right, so the next palette I want to talk about is from a brand that I've used for years and years and years. I've loved their eyeshadow palettes, but this one palette, I was surprised to find out just didn't work out for me, and this is the Nubian 3 Coral from Juvia's place. I actually had this in my loves list at Ulta forever and ever, because I thought the color story was really different, really intriguing. We've got a mix of cool and warm. We've got corals, we've got browns, and we've got some slate grays. But these slate gray mattes do not pick up on a brush. They're so hard pressed in the pan, they really do not work on my eyes. You get in the theme here, right? They just did not perform what I feel that Juvia's Place quality usually is for me. I don't feel like it is with this. I have had people comment when I've mentioned this in the past that they also have that same problem. So maybe it is a batch issue, or maybe it's just, these are just pressed so hard in the pan that you can't pick them up. That could be it. If you have this palette, I want to know your thoughts. Let me know if you have that same experience. But without these 2 gray mattes, like all the other mattes are just warm toned mattes. And I bought this because I was intrigued about those mix of colors. So without those 2 colors, it's just kind of a neutral palette to me, which is fine. Like I still have it. I haven't decluttered it. The quality of the rest of the shades in the palette is good. It's just, I was surprised that those didn't work for me. And then the last palette I want to talk about is the most surprising one of all, because this is one of the most hyped palettes I've ever heard people talk about. And again, this is just a preference thing. Well, I know it is because, well, let me just tell you what it is. So this is the Natasha Denona Biba palette. So this palette retails for $129. Let's just start off by saying that. So I expected to wash my car and make me look 20 years younger, okay? So it's not doing any of that, but at the very least, I want the shadows to perform. I really did not love the shimmers or the cream to powders in this palette. I love the mattes. I think the mattes are spectacular. Now, I didn't pay $129 for this palette. I think it was marked 50% off on Sephora, and then I had a gift card. So I think I paid like $12. So I'm not really complaining, really. If I'd paid $129, I'd start a riot. I'm being dramatic. But the shimmers in here, there's only 3 shimmers. They're not really my preference. They're a little bit thicker, a little bit heavier. They crease on me. They don't look very shiny. So they're more of that like thicker, almost satin, a little bit stepped up from a satin, but not really my preference. The cream to powders in this, oh my goodness, they creased on me so bad to the point where I was wearing, it was one of these cream to powders all over my lid, and I went out and I had my day. And I looked in the mirror like 2 hours later, and I was actually almost embarrassed to be wearing this makeup out in public. It looked like I had worn the makeup and slept in it and like rubbed my eyes. It was all worn off, patchy. It looked awful. And I don't usually have a problem with creasing. I really don't. I was wearing an eye primer, the usual eye primer that I always use, but the cream to powders in this really didn't work out for me. I was incredibly surprised. I've never heard anybody else say that. I'm glad I paid $12 and I'm keeping it because it's a Biba palette and I'm keeping it for the mattes. All right, and that is it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Leave me a comment down below letting me know your thoughts on anything I talked about today, and also let me know your thoughts. What are some palettes that surprised you? In either direction, I would love to know. And of course, I will link Angelica's video down below where I got this idea from, and I will link the palettes as well. And if you did enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up. That helps me out a lot when you do that. And if you're not already subscribed to my channel, I would love it if you would consider subscribing before you leave. I do upload videos weekly, and I'd love to see you back on my channel again. I want to thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.